We pre-plan for our children to become adolescents, teenagers, young adults. But what do we do when there's absolutely no denying it that aging is going to happen?
When I think of a big crisis, what comes to your mind? Like the biggest crises that we're going to run into in family issues?
As much as we want it to be so, the home is not a safe place. Preparation sounds practical, but emotionally, it's one of the biggest things families avoid.
It's like a firecracker. It can go off at any time. If we mishandle it, it can be a big deal. With a lot of preparation on this, we can maneuver this minefield very effectively. We have to remember that this is a very volatile time. If there's a weak point, it's going to be exposed. Well, thanks for joining us on Real Talk on Aging. And this is two people sitting here who are going through this process, been doing this for a long time, and we're so glad that you've joined us. This show's about seniors, for seniors, and we just want to share with you how important it is to take a look and expect at what things are going to be happening in your life. I'm Dave Ritterling. I've been 25 years in the senior living industry with Visiting Angels, and as an agency owner and now overseeing the globe for so many people getting care. It's an exciting topic, and I'm also joined by my co-host, Barb Faust. And Barb is a wonderful, wonderful wealth of knowledge as a nurse. Barb, tell them a little bit about yourself.
Yes, I've been a nurse for 40 plus years, which says a lot about aging. Primarily in the cardiac space, I was a diabetes educator, and then 20 years of hospice as well as home care. So I've come alongside a lot of families through my career, helping them to just figure out their journey, because no two journeys through the aging process are the same.
That's right. A lot of people will say, hey, show us a video on it. Well, there isn't one because everybody's story is very unique. And what we want to talk and explore today is about, well, how to avoid a crisis. I mean, what is a crisis to a family? It could be many things. And how do we avoid that crisis? And we want to kind of explore that topic today to make sure that you're thinking ahead. If you're older and you may be alone, not having people around you, you need to have some thought about, what do I do if this thing happens? And if you're a family member and you've got a loved one that's aging, this is your opportunity to kind of think ahead and say, well, everything seems to be good, and that's when things happen. Mm-hmm. It's like, there are no worries. Mom and dad are living alone. Everything is fine. And then that one unexpected event happens that changes everything. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And Barb, I know this is a little bit before we started the show today talking about, well, what is a crisis? And I know a crisis can be very different for me than it is to you. What are your thoughts on levels of crises that we need to think about?
Yeah, I think it depends on your dynamics, your role within the family. And some of us respond to a crisis being the first time mom or dad fall or the broken hip. Others, it might be something much smaller than that. Mom forgot an appointment today, which might be a crisis to me, but may not be a crisis to somebody else. So it just depends on your family dynamics and in the role you play within that family. But I also think one of the things we talk about or should talk about with mom and dad is that preparation. Don't wait for the fall and the broken hip to happen. We know that falls are the number one leading injury and cause of death in the elderly. So take a look around and identify what's going on. Maybe mom is beginning to trip a little bit. Mom isn't as steady. I see her footing not being the same. Have the conversation, avert the crisis by having the conversation before it happens. And by that I mean, my mom decorated the house by having throw rugs. We had carpeting, but throw rugs were all over the house. But that was her joy. That's how she made the house feel warm and welcoming. And so to ask mom to remove those throw rugs for her own safety was kind of a big deal.
Yeah, some people's culture, some people revolve around culture and families too. There are some families that aren't well thought out. And there are some families that are so fastidious about everything. I mean, of those crises come a lot less.
Right.
But to your point about crises in the home, I mean, what a big one. Falls, number one cause of death in seniors. But what do you see around the home that could mitigate a crisis? So when you go to see mom at home, and you obviously we're going to open up the refrigerator and see, 32 varieties of botulism from the styrofoam containers that have been there forever. Okay, that's one thing.
Yes.
Sometimes you see leaky wax rings around the toilet where there's water that's invading the walking space, and we see a lot of falls in bathrooms. I mean, so just looking at and exploring the safety in the home, especially an older home with steps, probably lights burned out, possibly pets, oxygen hoses that run across the floor. So averting crisis in that sense can be, as a family member, when we go to visit mom, we want to just have that in the back of our mind. What kinds of hazards are in the home that could cause a crisis? And that would be a big crisis if we were to have a fall or an event, or if mom is not turning off the stove after she thinks she's cooking.
Right.
We could have some issues there. So that's just one set of crises that families face.
That's a really good point, Dave. When we go to visit our parents, our senior parents, we have to play detective to some point, and that can be difficult because you want to be there as the son or the daughter or the grandchild. But exactly like you were saying, take a look around. What is it that you are seeing in the house that could pose a hazard or a crisis? And some of the things I think we forget, you had mentioned, the rugs, and is the lighting okay? The railing that goes up the stairs, handrails in the bathroom. But the other things is try out the toilet seat. If it's hard for you to get up because it is too low, it's going to be more difficult for your parent to do that. And I know that sounds crazy, but it's true. Think about the effort that is required. So try out the toilet seat. The other thing is, don't forget about the bed. Falls often happen in the middle of the night when someone needs to get up and, for whatever reason, be it use the bathroom, get a drink of water. And we forget that as our body is decompensating, it may not be as easy to get up out of a low bed or out of a high bed. So seriously, take a look at where mom and dad are sleeping because it may need to be adjusted. You do not need to go out and buy a brand new bedroom set. You do not need to saw the legs off the bed. But take a look and see if they have any difficulty navigating that.
I think when you look at crises and opportunity, the house can be a minefield. And when I say minefield, is that you've got emotional connection to so many things in the home itself. You may have a medical connection with an oxygen cable or cord. You may have dogs that are emotionally connected, but dogs are a real problem with falling. Dogs are sleeping in places you may not realize. You trip over them, they can jump. I mean, there's some issues that you need to really take a look at when we're talking about averting crisis. So as a family member, you may be addressing some of those minefields with mom and dad. They can be touchy, very touchy, but I think you still have to address them.
Absolutely. And we have to remember, again, that mom and dad created this home for the family. This speaks of their love and their welcoming to anyone who comes. So do it small. Start small. You don't have to change everything at once. Maybe just put brighter light bulbs in. Make sure the hand railings are tight, but take a look around and see where you can start. And if at all possible, involve mom and dad in that decision. Mom, I see this rug wants to curl up. Are you okay if we just maybe move that or pick it up? I'm concerned about you. And I think bringing that aspect in as well helps.
Yeah, I think, Barb, to your point, how you do it is very important. And I think if we go in critically, like that is a problem, our seniors get very defensive because that's their home and this is their identity. And I think we have to come in very affirmative and just say, no, I've so loved that rug has been so beautiful. And, and really just begin to speak to the fact that maybe the rug needs to be moved. We think it's beautiful, but it might be better here. We want to look for subtle ways to make those changes rather than negative or critical ways to make those changes, because then the whole program it's like stepping on the mine, and at that point it gets very difficult to make future changes that need to be done in the home.
Right. And there's so many more we want to focus on things in the home other than falls that are risks. And you already mentioned the minefield, navigating through. But take a look at the clutter around. It's not just about the fall. It's about hitting your head. It's about, like you said earlier, Dave, leaving the stove on, the microwave, getting things too hot, all of those type of things. So we really need to avert as much as possible.
Absolutely. And I think in further real talk on aging episodes, we really do need to address more of the safety in the home, and get into more detail about what that looks like. Because there are many little hazards, all the way from bugs and all sorts of things. We just need to be aware of those. And crises that could be small, but they could also gravitate into large crises. So when I say crises, when I think of a big crisis, what comes to your mind? Like the biggest crises that we're going to run into in family issues?
I think recognizing that as much as we want it to be so, the home is not a safe place. And we can talk about falls and mobility and that type of thing, but it goes way beyond that point. So you talked earlier about the rotting food in the refrigerator and keeping an eye on those things. I have encountered seniors in their home who, because of the diminished taste and vision, they actually have eaten food that has grown mold on it. So I think just being aware of those things, take a look at the outdated foods in the cabinet.
Well, and I think you have to look at, in my 5-year plan, when you would try to avert crisis, sometimes it makes sense to be planning another location. If we can't change the outcome of the steps in those fear factor areas, do we need to be looking at different locations? Now, that can also be a major pushback from our seniors because they've grown up, they've had children, there's emotional connection there.
Sure.
But we also have to be able to say, well, look, where is the best place for you to avert a crisis? Where are the kids located? How does all this play a part in maybe having to relocate to a new place to avert that crisis? And I go back to my mom and dad, and we had our 5-year plan in place, and we literally had that talk. It says, well, for right now, you're in your 70s, and you're able to have your own. We had them in a single level, sort of a condo they had bought. And then as things got to be a little backed up in terms of able to clean it and take care of it, then we talked about independent living. And this is what that would look like. And we had really a couple of year plan, and we scoped out where we wanted to go. So they went to independent living. Ultimately then, when it came time for incontinence and other things that happened, we had then looked at what's the next move.
Sure.
And that was assisted living. And ultimately, when my dad got stage 7 dementia, we had him in a basically a memory care unit, and mom had passed before that. So we had a very, very good conversation about what that would look like. And all along, I had caregivers coming in to bridge the gap. In every one of those scenarios, they had caregivers that came in from our agency and provided that a little additional help as we transitioned into other areas. That for us helped us avert that crisis of a situation in the home that would be catastrophic.
Sure. I think you're right. Having that conversation as far ahead of time as possible. And mom and dad are going to push back if we start talking about, it might be time to move somewhere else, and we need to be prepared for that. But don't forget, so many of our seniors do live in a 2-story home, and the stairs become a really frightening thing. Is there a den? Is there a guest room downstairs, a room that you really use for storage more than anything, where that bedroom could be moved downstairs? That alone may extend the amount of time that mom and dad can stay exactly where they want to, and that's in their own home.
Oh, very good idea, because, yeah, you're right. If we can move a bed to a better level so they're accessing one singular level,
Right.
that can really avert a crisis. And I think these are things families need to talk about when they get together.
Yes.
It needs to be an intentional discussion. What's the 5-year plan? Are we happy with where mom and dad are? Are we happy with the location of where our seniors our family members are living? That's a big deal. So that's why I think this conversation is so important. Well, families often feel overwhelmed when roles shift, and the need for care grows. Visiting Angels walks with you from the first conversation through every stage of the journey. So go to visitingangels.com to take your next step with a trusted partner. So, Barb, this section's about MythBusters. These are the things that people think that may be stinking thinking. And let's address some of what the myths are, and I want to get your comments on those. What about the myth of people think that if you plan ahead, like we're giving up hope? It's like by planning ahead, even talking about the future, it's like, we're thinking the worst.
We like to think we're immortal, that all of us, and that the changes we don't have to recognize.
I think that when we're planning ahead like this, it is important to know that the very discussion of the 5-year plan is to be encouraged. Now, there may be some gatekeeping that goes on here, right? Before we go into, can we talk about like the next 5 years? There's a gate we need to open. We can't barge in through that gate and say, hey, I've got a 5-year plan for you. That's not going to go over well. But to be able to say, I'd like to open the gate and talk about, intentionally talk about, where do you want to be in the next 5 years? And how do you think that's going to look? And get that conversation going. And I think what that does is we can speak hope into that conversation rather than a family member already thinking that we're giving up on them by having this discussion. What are your thoughts?
Your planning is not giving up hope. But again, as you said earlier, it's how we frame that. How do we address that with our parents? Acknowledging and aging is going to happen, whether we acknowledge it or not. Changes are going to take place. So it is not about giving up hope. And I think having that conversation with mom or dad and addressing that, being very transparent and honest. Mom, I know this is important to you. I am going to work through this with you, or we are going to work through this with you every step of the way. But I need you to hear me. Yeah. Changes are happening. And going back to that, I'm concerned, because our parents worry about us. So if they know that we are concerned for them, they're more apt to listen. Oh, I don't want you to worry, honey. I'm okay. That type of thing. So I think letting them know.
No, that's good. Here's another myth that I think, if we talk about what's going to happen, it's taking control away from our seniors. Right. Taking control, like we're going to run their life for them. Right. So that's a myth.
It is a myth. We come from the right place. We address these issues from the heart and from the love that we have for our parents. But we so want to fix it. So instead of saying we could do this or this, Mom, here's what I think we should do, and we just start rattling off the list. Instead of saying maybe mom or dad can no longer grocery shop. Okay, so that's a piece that they lose, actually, of their independence. Instead, Mom, I'm going to pick up some groceries for you. What are some meals you want to make this week? Would you rather make out the grocery list than have me do that? Those type of things, include them. Don't make the decisions for them. It's kind of like when we talk about dementia clients or persons with dementia.
Right.
Still allow them a choice. What do you like better, the blue shirt or the yellow shirt? So don't make the decision for them. Give them a choice.
That is so good. How we approach this really opens the door to their participation. If we go in and we really make those decisions for them, problem solving is not what we need to do. Our problem solving is really interactive.
Right.
And together we come up with the right solution. But if we come up with that solution without the buy-in of our senior, we're fighting an uphill battle.
Awesome.
And I run into a lot of families who have done that, who've tried to just say, take control away. You don't have to worry about a thing. We're just going to do this, whether or not you like it or not, because that's the best thing for you. And then we get pushed back. We lose momentum in that process. So we can really approach change in a positive way if we think about it and we work it. So the myth here is that you never really have to have this discussion with your mom and dad. And that myth would be
baloney.
Baloney. Absolutely. Well, I think that's your response. Beluga. And in the sense that we have our best results when we take people lovingly into the discussion of what does this look like for you? What is okay for you? What is not okay for you? So a big myth that we need to address is, do we talk about this at all with them, about this area of what does the future look like? Do we just avoid it completely? And I think that's the myth, because a lot of families think that that's what they should do, is not bring it up.
Exactly. It's kind of like waiting for that crisis to occur. It is so difficult. It's interesting, just the whole dynamics of life. We pre-plan so much for a birth. We pre-plan for our children to become adolescents, teenagers, young adults. But what do we do when there's absolutely no denying it that aging is going to happen? Eventually, we're going to be in our 60s or 70s, God willing, 80s, and we have to acknowledge it. So the sooner you can acknowledge that we need to prepare and have those conversations, the better it is.
Yeah, no, it really just, in opening the door again, being gentle with it and asking, what are your thoughts on this? Finding out where the barriers are, finding out where the door's closed, finding out where the door will open, and begin to problem solve and active listen to them. And that allays the fears, because the fear I think mom and dads have is that the kids are going to come in at a vulnerable moment and make a decision we don't agree with. And I think those discussions can happen way early on in the process. And the earlier, the better. Mom, Dad, you're living here, you've retired now. What are your next steps? What are you thinking about doing? It's the strategic discussion that will go right along with that aging trend,
Right.
and you can make it so that you're absolutely generating hope and actually creating a destiny in that aging process. And it won't feel like we're fighting it, pulling it back, and that they're not going to have every opportunity to have a say in that.
Right. And depending on the relationship you have with your mom or dad, have some fun with it. If your mom or dad have a good sense of humor, enter into that conversation there. But also let them know, as we said earlier, let them know you care. You know what, Mom? You're doing great. I love the fact that you can, still drive to church and get together with friends. But the truth is that isn't always going to be the case. And I know you may not want to hear this, but I need your help. So I know what you want moving forward. What is it you hope for? What is it you want your life to look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now? If you're able to share that with me, we can make that happen. I am better prepared to help you.
And that's because we love you. And that really is the common theme, is that we often forget to tell our mom and dads how much we love them. And I think that becomes the theme that carries this forward, is that love and respect that we have, and trying to parse out Yeah, a lot of the tactical disappointments maybe that we had as kids, but to be able to put mom and again, biblically, we need to respect our mom and dad, and that's a very
Mhm.
important part of this is that that love and respect is letting them know how much we love them, and because we love them, there are some decisions that we need to make that will enhance and also stay well ahead of some of those crises, which can really debilitate families.
Right. And I think what's important for our listeners also is we know that conversation can be challenging. It's often, where do I start? What do I say so mom or dad don't become defensive? There are materials out there that you can use that will help you start that conversation. One I can think of off the top of my head is 5 Wishes. Another one is talking with my aging parent. Another one is My Choices. If you look those up, it helps you begin and lead the conversation. These conversations are also available on YouTube, where you can watch the full discussion and catch clips from each episode. Subscribing helps you stay connected as new episodes drop. If the topic matters to you, we would love to have you there.
In the what if portion of how we look at structuring care for mom and dad, I always go back to what if the family comes together and we start to see all the nuances arise that can get in the way of that particular care.
Mhm.
I'm going back to some memories of doing this with larger families where, let's say there's five kids involved with this decision on what mom and dad should do as regards to care. And you look at not only there's temperaments in the family, we have family histories. Some have tarnished histories with the family group. Some may have professional proclivities in terms of being an attorney or maybe a medical professional. So there are a lot of different ideas that come together in the family situation. And those of us who are facilitating care and facilitating direction for family members, we have to understand that every family member has an identity in that group, and we have to be able to facilitate the best outcome in terms of that decision process. Sometimes a family member may want to be in charge of all the finances. Maybe a family member wants to be in charge of the care, and that usually means that most family members want to be in charge of the care. And so in our situation, it's always helpful for us to help parse out what each family member is there to accomplish. Sometimes you get a family member that doesn't want to spend any money at all because they want more in their inheritance. And that creates a polarity in the families. Some family members say, well, Dad, you earned it. Let's spend all on the care you need. Some family members are fighting that because there's an ulterior motive to that. So it's a real balancing act in family sometimes to be able to say, look, we're all in this together. Look, we all care about what happens to mom and dad. We want them to have a say in this. But let's divide a lot of the tasks here and agree that we have all the same direction in mind. And it's nice to say, look, Susie, why don't you manage mom's care? Linda, you're a financer. Why don't you handle the finances that come this way? And you can parse up those to even handling family events to see mom and dad.
Right.
Everybody has a role here,
Exactly.
And I think those in the what if scenario is if you can create your family identity now and begin to say, okay, well, this is what Jeff would want. This is what Mike would want, and begin to put this all together and formulate a family unity pact to help mom and dad. When the things happen, it's a lot easier to get together. It's a lot easier to come together with your defined roles that are all working in the same direction and iron those out before you have a crisis.
Right. Right.
That's great success in my mind.
It is. And I think the other aspect of that is, like you said, each of us have a very definitive role within the family. I'm the youngest of 8 kids. So some people might think that I'm the peacemaker, which to an extent is true. But I'm also because I'm a nurse, I tend to be the go-to. And when we know that there's that one individual who is willing to take it and run with it, it's easy. Maybe not easy is the right word, but we feel a certain confidence and comfort level in being able to step back a little bit. I know Sue's going to take care of it, so I don't have to worry about it. It's not that you lack the desire to help. You just know that Sue is able and capable. So I think that role that we play is one thing. I think another aspect of it is going back to that transparency. Who is best fitted? Just because I might be better fitted to handle the finances doesn't mean that I'm the one who wants to do that. Maybe I'll have nothing to do with that checkbook. So I think, again, having that conversation, where would you be most comfortable helping out? And I know I've worked with families. Mom has a daughter who lives right next door.
So I have more rights to take care of Mom than you do because I live next door, right?
To some extent, but I also see it from the other avenue.
Right.
I'm angry because Sue lives right next door, and yet she wants nothing to do with caregiving. And I've heard that from family members. I've had family members call me outside of family meetings and say, I love Mom just as much as anybody else, or I love Dad just as much as anybody else. But I cannot be a caregiver. That is not my gift. So don't become upset and think that they are less willing. Talk to them. Would you be comfortable doing the finances? Could you take care of the checkbook? Could you do the grocery shopping? And if you're a sibling who lives distant, understood. You can't be there all the time, but what can you do? Maybe you can do some of those check-in calls. Maybe you can ramp up your visits a little bit. So I think the desire to, or not the desire, but the failure to act sometimes speaks both to one's discomfort moving forward with it, and then also, as you said, the particular role within the family unit.
Yeah, I think even if there's a tarnished family member, to be able to include everyone is really vital to that type of unity, so that you don't have polarity developing and families moving in that direction. That is a bit of a minefield, and I think the word that best solves this, it's very cathartic sometimes, because you're bringing in a situation with Mom and Dad where you're having to make a decision. You're bringing in life experiences, both successes and failures, and often many failures, that you didn't perform or do as well as a sibling did, or that Mom liked you better, that sort of thing. I hear that a lot. And I think when you come down to trying to, as a professional, trying to help a family in crisis, what we're trying to do is we're trying to sort of combine the forces, and everybody comes together on equal footing, rather than trying to isolate someone in that group. And I think that's where we get the best results, is when families will see the big picture, recognize their role in it, and agree to allow someone with more experience to do that, but they're working together in the best interest of Mom and Dad.
Exactly. Preparation often fails because families miss the early signs. Next time, we'll talk about the signals families overlook and why they matter more than people realize. Don't miss it.
So remember, the road ahead is a gift. Until next time.